The last part of this series saw Naruto transported to a world of utter nightmares. A world where the worst of humanity bore its fangs and where life was as scary as death because they were basically one and the same. Watching everyone you care about die, wondering when your turn would come next. Such is the life of a Senju in the era of the Warring States, and Naruto is trying to find a way to come to terms with this. Can he come to terms with this? Or perhaps the true question to ask is, should he? Is this really all life is? Just a constant series of fighting and dying for nothing more than the world's largest blood feud? What was the gain? What was the cost? Naruto's life is far different now than it was before, so now let's see which will give first, Naruto's will or the world's system. Welcome to the Amagi. Before we begin, we publish a new video every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. Even if you think you are subscribed, you might not be. We've noticed that over 80% of our viewers aren't actually subscribed to the channel, but we would really appreciate it if you did subscribe so you can catch up on all of our videos as soon as they come out. Thanks so much. The Amagi's reach stretches beyond just this channel, so if you're a fan of us, please consider subscribing to our other channels and following us on all of our social media. Help us reach our goal of passing 100,000 followers on all of our accounts by the end of the year. The wind blew over the fields and through the trees. A cold wind. It felt like a storm was blowing in from the distance, and the dark clouds in the sky above betrayed nature's intentions. Everyone stood there in front of a hole being dug into the ground as a body was lowered into it. The only ones there were Butsuma, Hashirama, Tobirama, Itama, and Naruto. They and the ones digging the grave. There just wasn't enough time for everyone to lament. There were other graves being dug, other battles being waged. This was just a personal moment with the family, where the family could only be supported by itself. But as Naruto looked down upon the grave, he wondered if their family could support itself. By this time, his eyes had dried. Yes, he was still sad, debilitatingly so, but he had no more tears left to cry. He had drained himself dry. He wasn't the only one either, but poor Itama, it seemed, would never run out of tears to cry, and that just made Naruto's heart hurt even worse. He would embrace his little brother tightly as he cried. "It's not your fault. It is my fault." "No, it's not your fault," he said, just trying to reassure him. Itama seemed to be taking it the hardest. He felt as if it were his fault that Kawarama had died. Kawarama was a kind boy who put his family before anything and everything. When Itama's stomach was feeling upset from his nervous nature being thrown onto the battlefield, Kawarama rushed in ahead to get him something to settle his stomach. But this was just him falling into a trap. He was caught among the number of Senju having been ambushed, and it was far too late for him by the time the others arrived. Itama had been bearing this with him ever since. Kawarama had expressed his hope that Itama not blame himself, but that's exactly what Itama was doing, and he couldn't help it. He wasn't doing this out of some disrespect for his late brother's wishes, he just couldn't stop himself. And somewhere in the afterlife, Kawarama probably understood. After all, that was the kind of person that Kawarama was. He was kind and understanding. The world truly was a lesser place without him. Naruto consoled his little brother just as Kawarama once did. Itama had always been sensitive, and it was always Kawarama who had to console him and make him feel better. After all, that was the duty of an older brother. But now that Kawarama was gone, Itama was on his own. Well, no. Naruto would be the rock instead. This moment would not split them apart, it would bring them closer together. As Naruto continued to console his little brother, he looked back at the grave and thought deeply upon how pointless it all was. How pointless Kawarama's death was. How pointless everyone's death was. How pointless this war was. What was it even about anymore besides pure and utter hatred? And worst of all, Naruto knew that Kawarama's death would be a reason used to justify this war's continuation. Naruto hated that so badly. One pointless death would lead to another, then another, until there was nothing left to kill and die for. This was how the world ended. Not with a whimper, as had become the stereotypical way of writing, as Tobirama's collection of novels and works by the greatest authors in history had spoken, but with a bang. The world would end with a bang. It would immolate itself until there was nothing left to burn. A dead world that would only know peace when one or less humans were living on the surface. How pointless. How utterly meaningless. Naruto wasn't the only one who thought this. They all thought this, save Butsuma, it seemed. But the only one brave enough to say it was Hashirama, who immediately got his ears slapped back by his father for daring to impugn upon the honor of the fallen, or so he felt. Hashirama would retort that he was not impugning upon the honor of the dead, but upon the honor of the living, who had sent innocent children like Kawarama to their demise. Those were the people whose honor deserved to be dragged through the mud. As if honor were something they could actually know. You can't drag through the mud what didn't exist. That was Hashirama's way of thinking. But after angering his father enough to strike him at a funeral, Hashirama bit his tongue. After all, it seemed that he was the only one with enough sense to see things as they clearly were, and right now, at this moment, this conversation should be tabled. This was Kawarama's moment. This was them enshrining him in his finest hour, forever remembering the warrior he was, the Senju. But Hashirama simply wanted to remember the true Kawarama, the one who didn't want to fight others but loved them. A spark, an ember of what humanity was supposed to be burning and ultimately fizzling out. The storms that the wind had threatened began to release their precipitation. As the rain fell, the five of them watched as the Undertakers tripled their speed. Once Kawarama was squared away, they began to make their way back home. Butsuma, still angered at Hashirama, shut himself away in his own room for the sake of his son. All the while, the four boys returned to their living quarters. They looked down at the side of the room where Kawarama had stored his things. Each one gulped, a feeling of shame coming over them, despite being willed to do so by their late brother. Itama sat by the window as he always did. The depression in the floor beside him left a physical mark in the world of the absence of someone precious, merely a mirror into the hearts of the four children currently looking through Kawarama's things. Remember guys, Kawarama told us we should choose one thing, Hashirama said, not particularly because he was afraid the other boys would take more. Kawarama had originally asked him to equally split his stuff between them, but more that Hashirama was afraid his brothers might chicken out and not take anything. This was to honor Kawarama's dying wish, to take a memento of his life so he could always be with them. Hashirama was the first to choose. He had to always be first because he was the oldest, the leader, the rock. He was the one who reassured his brothers that this wasn't wrong. Hashirama's item of choice was an old leather-bound journal. Inside, it possessed the secret thoughts of Kawarama, as well as some doodles and drawings he'd make whenever he felt bored. This was what he chose, as it was what possessed the most personality left behind. He never wanted to forget who Kawarama was, so he took the book. Tobirama looked through the things, and among everything, he found a pair of reading glasses. He picked them up. I remember when he wore these. Ironically, I was the one who bought them for him. He didn't use them much. Tobirama cracked a smile. I won't use them either, he said as he claimed his memento. Naruto looked over everything and didn't know what he should choose. It just didn't feel right to take anything. Hashirama looked at him. It's okay. Take something. Naruto shook his head. I don't like it. It's too final. If I don't mess with anything, it almost feels like he's coming back. But he's not, Tobirama said. The sooner you accept that, the better off you'll be. This was his wish. Choose something to be your memento. What will you choose? Naruto looked at all three of his brothers and then backed down on the things he was supposed to take. He smiled as a thought came to his mind. He reached down and picked up a little stuffed bear. The bear had a little sash around its forehead possessing the Senju crest. He lifted it up. Tobirama and Hashirama were surprised. You're choosing that? Naruto smiled. Yes. He then turned and walked towards the window and knelt down beside Itama. He offered the bear to the boy, who seemed a little surprised. But I already have something. Naruto nodded. Yes. But I've decided what I want to use to remember Kawarama by. I choose you. And in that moment, both physically and symbolically, Naruto sat down in Kawarama's place. The depression in the mat felt so large, despite Kawarama being Naruto's younger brother. He could never replace Kawarama, nor would he ever wish to, but in the end, he would continue what Kawarama had dedicated his life to doing, and that was to be the heart and soul of the brothers. Like Hashirama and Kawarama, Naruto would shoulder any pain for the sake of his brothers who needed him. As the day passed, Hashirama sat down by the desk and raised a pen. Tobirama walked over and looked at him. What are you doing? Hashirama looked over his shoulders. There were 2 pages left in this journal. I'm filling them for Kawarama. Tobirama looked over Hashirama's shoulder. Hashirama had artfully drawn an image of Kawarama smiling and laughing beside his brothers. On the second page, Hashirama had put down the date of when he was writing and just a simple sentence to commemorate this moment. We miss you, Kawarama. That's all it said. As the day went along, everyone did whatever it was they desired. There wasn't much. Tobirama tried to take his mind off things by reading, and Hashirama spent most of his time looking through the journal. He would smile as he read some jokes, some good memories, and he would frown and almost threaten to cry when he reached the section about Kawarama's own insecurities. Naruto continued to sit beside Itama the entire day as the boy laid his head on his shoulder and lazily spent his time trying to sleep away the pain. They didn't have dinner that night. They did not wish to be reminded of the empty chair that would never again be filled. That's not to say that they didn't eat. Well, I suppose you could say that. They had snacks, but it just seemed that nobody found the strength nor the desire to eat anything. Eventually, Hashirama found himself in front of his father's door. He went to knock on it when he stopped. He heard something. His curiosity got the better of him. He slid open the door and peeked in. The far wall had a hole about the size of Butsuma's fist in it. He then witnessed his father sitting there at the edge of his bed. He held a picture frame in his hands and lovingly stroked the image. It was of Butsuma and his wife, the mother of Hashirama, Tobirama, Kawarama, Itama, and the adoptive mother of Naruto. "I don't know what I'm going to do," he said. "I wish you were here. You're what the boys deserved, not me." Hashirama looked on with a tear in his eye. He gently closed the door as silently as he had opened it, and he walked away. That night, the brothers all brought their sleeping mats together and pushed them as close together as possible. They four would sleep curled up with each other, hoping that this companionship would mend the hole rent open in each of their hearts. Did it? Well, the hole was still there, but there was joy to be found in the brotherly love shared between them. The day after, the cold tactician that was their father had returned, and he was ready to force his sons back into training. After all, the worst thing they could do would be to dwell on it. If they let it eat them alive, then that was exactly what it would do. And so he began to force each of them back into their regularly scheduled training regiment, all except Naruto, who he would force into special training to increase his proficiency, if one could say he even had any, with the Nine Tails inside. Naruto trained his hardest for his family, for his father, but he was having a hard time just letting it happen, and so Butsuma would push him into positions where he had to use his powers or die, and instinctively Naruto made use of the Nine Tails. Still though, what he could do was nothing compared to what Butsuma wanted, and so he had to work from the ground up. To that end, Butsuma knew that this would be a long and arduous training for Naruto, and that there was a chance that he would never control it at all. So Butsuma came up with a new plan. He wanted Naruto to instead learn proper genjutsu. Once Naruto showed proficiency with it, he taught him how to instead summon the Nine Tails from within him without actually becoming it. Yes, it might be a little weaker, as Naruto will have to keep enough of its chakra inside of him to keep himself alive, but regardless, they'll have the Nine Tails under control, and that's a boon. After the training, however, it comes time to return to war. The look of fatigue is clear on everyone's faces. The stress and inability to rest was shaving years off their lives, and each night they prayed that the war would eventually end. As they would get to sleep, Hashirama would softly talk to them, telling them each about their shared dreams, about how they would eventually end the war, how there would be peace, how no more Senju or Uchiha would have to die any longer, and how they could start a village of both the Senju and Uchiha and everyone would live happily ever after. It was like a storybook ending, one that none of them believed they would ever see. Even if it did happen, they didn't believe that any of them would live to see it, but it was a nice thought. This particular mission they were on was designed to be an attempt to retake land that the Uchiha had seized months earlier. It had become a staging ground for further conflicts in the area, and they knew that unless they took this place back, they would never win the war. They were on the ropes. This was a make or break moment for the Senju, a time to turn the tide of the war back, and their secret weapon was Naruto. Until this time, he had not displayed his Nine Tails in the battlefield for any to see save the Senju, Shimura, and Sarutobi clans. Butsuma had recently met with the clan head, Sasuke Sarutobi. This was the plan they had devised together. They continued their march. Naruto walked up to Itama, whose face was pale as a ghost. "Don't worry, I'll protect you no matter what." Itama shook his head, much to Naruto's confusion. "No, you have a mission to do, big brother. If you're too busy worrying about me, you can't do it and people will die. I may be emotionally compromised, but I'm as strong as you are physically. I'll be fine." Naruto stumbled over what to say. Are you sure?" Itama nodded. "I'm certain." Naruto nodded in return and let his little brother do as he needed. He walked back to Hashirama. Itama really is growing up. Hashirama was looking down at a map as they walked. He sorta has to. He can't afford not to. He looked to Naruto. "Sorry, I don't mean to water down his accomplishments. I'm just trying to think analytically right now. I have to wear my Tobirama hat since Tobirama is stuck in another unit today." Naruto looked back at Itama. "I'm nervous though. Itama's gonna be on his own team today. Itama's never been on a team by himself. Do you think he'll be okay?" Hashirama shrugged. "I certainly hope so." It wasn't much longer after this that Itama's group peeled off and went south, the opposite direction of Tobirama's group, which went north. Hashirama and Naruto's team, along with the main forces, continued straight towards the enemy, moving east. As they walked, Hashirama spoke. "I was reading Kawarama's journal." Naruto looked over to listen as the sounds of war grew louder in his ear. Hashirama looked into the trees as he spoke. Whether he wrote it himself or took it from somewhere else, I don't know. But Kawarama wrote down a poem in this journal, and I think it's fitting for the situation we're about to be put into. "What is it?" Naruto asked. Hashirama spoke. "You are blood rushing down a mountain, spirit of hate, greed, and anger, dominator of heaven and earth." Naruto felt a chill run down his spine. "Naruto, today you will become war incarnate. When you do, remember why you fight. And why do I fight? Why do any of us fight, Hashirama? Hashirama smiled. So nobody has to fight ever again. Naruto and Hashirama made their way toward the battle lines where their group made way, punching a hole leading between enemy lines. Hashirama put his hand on Naruto's shoulder. I'm with you all the way. Naruto bit his thumb and pressed it into the ground. Below him, the titanic form of the nine-tailed demon fox rose. Naruto quickly placed the beast under genjutsu so as to not lose control. Maintaining his control, Naruto began to sweep the field. His eyes turned to a fox's slit as he felt its anger boiling inside. To cast the nine tails under genjutsu was to cast it on himself. The nine tails stepped forward, crushing trees below its feet along with the bodies of its foes. With a quick charge, he let loose a tailed beast bomb towards the direction of the Uchiha main forces. The blast went up like a nuclear explosion. As the battle continued, Itama could hear the nine tails in the distance. He flinched with each roar, the sound of the explosions causing him to physically cringe in fright as the wind from the massive blast pushed against his face. His group was designed to push the Uchiha closer to the nine tails, but Itama wasn't sure he wanted to get closer to this thing. As they pushed forward, however, the Uchiha pushed back. It seemed as if their desperate attempt to escape was giving them superhuman abilities. Or perhaps there were reinforcements. Perhaps they had all focused on one side of the battlefield to maximize their chance of escape. Either way, his group was being decimated. Itama was terrified, and as the Uchiha grew closer to them, the last surviving Senju turned and grabbed Itama and lifted him into the air by his collar like a mother cat carrying its kitten, before placing him into the hollow of a fallen tree. He would then pull his blade and prepare for the Uchiha. Itama sat in the fallen tree's trunk silently as he listened to the sound of blades clanging up against each other. Suddenly, there was a disgusting squish sound. Itama covered his mouth quickly to keep from screaming as he knew his last guardian was dead. He just sat there, silently in the tree, tears dripping down his face. All he could think to himself was, why? Why did I have to be born? Why did I have to live only to suffer like this? He heard the Uchiha commander shout for them to fan out and search for survivors, and to make way for the main force's escape. As Itama sat there, he heard the sound of grass as a pair of boots began to walk near the log. He held his breath. Don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. He heard the sound of the shoes as they left. 10 seconds of silence passed. Itama let out a sigh of relief. Suddenly, the moss covering the entrance to the log was moved, and a set of Sharingan looked in at him. Itama threw a smoke pellet into the Uchiha's face and climbed out of the log and ran. After him, a voice shouted from behind. They gave chase. Itama ran as fast as he could. He wasn't as strong as the men chasing him by any means, but he was faster. Such was the benefit of being small. For a moment, he thought he could get away, but then the Uchiha started coming in from the sides. He was just barely able to avoid them, but then fate dealt him a cruel hand, or perhaps this was the Uchiha plot all along. He was led to a dead end, and as soon as he saw it, he knew whose dead end it was. This is my dead end, he said, his face growing paler, the feeling of panic welling up in his chest. He felt like he would surely puke. He turned around and unsheathed his sword, tears welling up in his eyes as the Uchiha surrounded him. They stepped closer. One of the Uchiha who was pulling his blade stopped and let it rest in its sheath. This is just a kid, he said. Another one held up his hand. No, this isn't just any kid. This is Bootsama's kid. This is the brother of that brat that dropped a demon fox on top of us. Suddenly, the sword that was resting in the sheath was pulled. Any inhibitions they previously had soared away like birds as they grew determined not only to kill him, but inflict upon him the pain of the entire Uchiha clan at once. Itama kept his blade raised, tears flowing down his cheeks. Back! Back! Don't come any closer, please! They merely pushed his single blade aside with one of the 5 they were carrying. Please, he said as they came closer. He tried to back up as far as he could, back flush to the stone blocking his way. Please, I don't want to die. Please, don't kill me. My family already lost one son this week. Don't take me away too. I beg you. His cries fell on deaf ears. Instead, one of them spoke. I lost not only one of my brothers, but 2 of my sisters as well, and my father. Trust me, when you're gone, they'll make do. Itama began to cry. Please, I'm begging you. I'm not ready to go. I don't want. Suddenly, there was a blade in his belly. He looked down on it, the blood pouring from the wound. 2 more blades passed through. Itama stood there. The blades had been removed and he fell to his knees, growing weak. Finally, one last blade passed through him, causing to fall on the wielder. Please, I'm scared. I don't want to die. I don't want to go. The man stood there for a moment, compassion on his face. He was having second thoughts now. The boy was not displaying what he expected, or perhaps he was displaying exactly that and somehow awakening the last embers of humanity within his murderers. It was too late now. It was beyond too late. There was no saving him now. The Uchiha slowly and carefully removed the blade as to cause less pain. What are you doing? One of the Uchiha called out to him. The man spoke. I think I'm not mad anymore. I don't hate this boy. He's a Senju, Itachi. A Senju. This is what they do. They die. The Uchiha, now known as Itachi, shook his head. Maybe they shouldn't. Maybe nobody should. He looked at Itama, who was still shaking, in shock, his mind aflame in terror. The Uchiha looked down on him as he stood. For what it's worth, I am sorry. He turned and began to walk away with the other Uchiha. Itama raised his hand. Please, don't go. I don't want to die alone. He attempted to cry out, but the words escaped his mouth as only a whisper. He was alone. There was nobody there, just Itama. Itama, a voice said. He opened his eyes and looked up. Kawarama? The boy with the scar on his cheek smiled to Itama as he always had. Itama spoke. Kawarama, I think I'm dying. Help me. Kawarama's face showed sorrow on it, as if he were fighting back tears. Itama, you already have. Itama's eyes sparked with realization as he looked to the side and saw his own body slumped against the stone. He began to cry harder. Kawarama pulled him into a hug. Don't be scared. It's beautiful over there. There's no war. Mom's there, and you won't believe how many Uchiha and Senju are there. They're all friends, too. The peace Hashirama said we would get to see, it's there. It's all there. There's no need to be afraid. There's no reason to be scared. Itama looked to him, tears still present on the lower lids of his eyes. But what about Naruto? What about Hashirama and Tobirama? What about Dad? They'll have to learn how to manage on their own. They'll be sad, yes, but in the grand scheme of things, in the eyes of eternity, their pain will only last a moment. They'll heal, and when their time comes, we'll come and get them. He took Itama's hand, and both walked into the light, leaving the darkness and the terror of the world behind for the peace of love and heaven, and the one who made it. The sound of crows overhead marked the resting place of Itama as the distant sound of explosions and warfare sung its lullaby for the innocent soul whose eternal sleep was now at hand. The battle had turned, and now the Uchiha were on the run. This was perplexing to Hashirama and Naruto, as they were supposed to be unable to escape. Nonetheless, the Senju gave chase, Tobirama's group catching up. Tobirama ran forward and stood upon a stone and looked back at his troops and let out the most vicious battle cry a child soldier had ever made. It was enough. It coaxed from his troops a cry as powerful as his. They gave chase with everything that they were, even going so far as to rally the troops of Naruto and Hashirama. They gave chase too. Hashirama looked to Naruto. Itama's forces were supposed to stop them. I hope to God that he's okay. Naruto released the contract with Kurama and the beast disappeared. Together they joined the group chasing after the Uchiha. As they passed by the area where the southern forces were supposed to be boxing the Uchiha in, Naruto and Hashirama slowed down, letting their forces pass them by. They cried out, Itama! Itama, where are you? There was no response. It seemed as if there had been no survivors. The air was permeated with the stench of blood. The two brothers rushed through the forest, calling out for their youngest sibling. Naruto, calling upon the power of the Nine Tails, found he was able to pick up a scent. It smelled like Itama. Coming to a fallen tree, Naruto sniffed around it. Itama was here. His smell is strong. He lifted his nose into the air and turned around. He ran off. That way. He pointed. They followed the smell only to find a thick grove of trees and a single stone. And sitting, slumped against that stone, was their brother. Itama! Hashirama called out. He ran to him and grabbed him. He saw the wounds left behind by the blades and felt no pulse. Itama was cold to the touch. He held Itama in his arms. Hashirama looked up at Naruto with terror. His breathing was growing faster and faster. Suddenly, the tears overwhelmed him and began to run liberally all over his face. He began to cry. He wailed out. Naruto had never seen this. He had never seen Hashirama cry, not even when Kawarama was killed. He had held it together for the team, but the team, the family, it wasn't here. It was just him and Naruto, and it seemed that his emotions, likely from Berry and Kawarama, had built up and were finally released right here at this moment. Naruto also began to cry. I swore I would protect him. I swore I wouldn't let him die. I failed. Together they hugged the body of Itama, as if their tears and their love would somehow revive the child. But tears don't resurrect the dead. Love between brothers only resurrects the fallen in storybooks. This was reality, and it was time they woke up to it. This was their wake-up call. They wanted to build a world of peace with Itama, but nothing ever seemed to go as planned. Was peace even possible? Was it even real? Or was pain, suffering, and futility all this reality had to offer? This, what they lived in now, was a nexus of causality. Two opposite concepts connected as one within the singularity of human enigma. Humans, for all their logic, were illogical, and their actions, words, and ways contradicted with what they were supposed to be. Humans were up and down at the same time, in and out, light and dark, love and hate. They were living in hell, right now, and the fires that seared them were of their own creation. Hashirama shook his head. I was a fool. Naruto looked at him. Why? Hashirama took a deep breath, trying to help him gain control of his faculties. I believed that peace could exist. There's no such thing as peace. I was a fool, a child believing in a fairy tale. There will never be peace with the Uchiha until one side inevitably kills the other. There will be no peace until we're all Kawarama. Naruto slapped Hashirama in the face. Hashirama seemed surprised. Don't you say that. You're the reason I've made it this far. Faith in your dream, faith in peace, the hope that drives me forward. I would have died a long time ago if I had just given in to the belief that there was no peace. You can't show such doubt. You're our leader, and you have to be an example. An example to who? Hashirama snapped in a voice so loud that birds flew away. To Itama? To Kawarama? Who's left to believe in me? Tobirama? He's never believed in me, he's too smart to. And you've seen this with your own eyes. You've seen my doubt and fear. Who's left to fool? I've got to be strong for my family. I'm losing my family. You and Tobirama are the only thing I have left, Hashirama said as he broke down into tears once more. Naruto hugged him. You've been strong for so long, but I'm not asking you to fool me or Tobirama. I'm not asking you to lead us. I'm asking you to lead yourself. I'm not asking for you to boost my faith in your dreams. I have faith. I'm asking you to believe in your dreams. It can work. It can happen. It's foolish, Hashirama said. It's a foolish cause and it's meaningless. No cause is meaningless so long as there's one fool left to die for it. I believe in peace. I believe that we can achieve it. Don't let yourself be fooled by this world as father was. You can make peace. You may be the only one. You're the heir to the Senju. You're the only one who can lead us to peace. And if you don't believe in yourself, then believe in the people who believe in you. Believe in Kawarama, believe in Itama, believe in Tobirama, and believe in me. We can still do it. And when we do, we won't have to witness war anymore. Children, regardless of their clan, can grow up at their own pace and play with each other in the streets like one big happy family. Focus on that and make it a reality. That is our reality. And it's time that the whole world wakes up to it. Hashirama nodded. He stood and held the body of Itama. I'm taking him home. I won't let him go unburied here. He will be by his family, by Kawarama. And so, Hashirama and Naruto returned home. Tobirama had not known they had left and only stopped his chase when the Uchiha moved into deep territory where reinforcements were scrambled to rout the Senju forces. With the help of the Sarutobi clan, they managed to retake this sliver of land and to keep their forces alive and in control. But as Tobirama returned to the base they had set up, he was informed that a letter had arrived to him from his brothers back home. He broke the seal and opened it, reading the contents. He speed read the letter, his eyes only choosing the important words to take in to grasp context. The words Itama and dead, death, dying were the only context he needed. And when he read those words, he crumpled the paper and threw it into the trash can, lit up a cigarette, and dropped the still lit match into the can to set it ablaze. This was him letting off steam without making himself look like an emotionally uncontrolled leader. He took a breath and then looked at his lieutenant commander. Take the helm. I need to return home. Can you do that? Sarutobi should be here by day's end. His lieutenant nodded. Tobirama left. Tobirama returned home and walked in. Is it true? Is Itama dead? Butsuma looked over him, a glass of high-content sake in his hand. He looked out the window. You've always been an observant boy, Tobirama. Don't ask questions you already know the answer to. Tobirama let out a sigh. Damn it. We already buried him. Tobirama looked up. What? Butsuma took a sip from his glass. We couldn't wait for you. We didn't want to pull you away. Tobirama's fists clenched. The last possible moment I could have laid eyes on my little brother and you robbed that from me? Butsuma looked to his son out of the corner of his eye. You didn't want to see what they did to him. That wasn't for you to decide, father. Yes, it was, Butsuma said as he smashed the glass on the table. You're both my son and my subordinate. If I decide you do something, you do it without questions asked. If I say you don't want to see your little brother mutilated, he fought back emotion. If I say you don't want to see it, you say, thank you for sparing me. Tobirama stood there. You send me to war. You send us to fight and die. And then you tell us we're not strong enough to say goodbye when the time comes? He was my brother, father. And if I wanted to be there to send him off, I'm gonna damn well be there. Screw your war. Screw the Uchiha. Screw Senju duty. I have a duty to my family, and it comes before this war. This war is a matter of your family. It's a matter of a 1,000-year-old grudge you're too stupid to give up. Butsuma stood up. Tobirama was on his desk in a flash. Sit down, he shouted. Butsuma sat back down. Tobirama knelt down before him. I've seen friends, family, all of them fight and die for this damned cause. And you've not once told me why I have to, except that it's a Senju's duty. Duty for what? What caused this war? Why are your children dying? Tell me why, father. Tell me now. Butsuma looked up at his son from his chair. I don't know. Tobirama stood and jumped down from the desk. He turned to leave. You dared slap Hashirama when he said Kawarama died for nothing. You can't even tell me what we're fighting for anymore. He died for nothing and Itama died for nothing too. One day I'll die for nothing, Naruto and Hashirama. And then you'll have lost your family for nothing. Remember that the next time you send me out into battle. Tobirama shut the door behind him. Butsuma sat back in his chair. He should be mad. He should be furious. He should demand his stolen honor returned in hand-to-hand combat, but he didn't. Butsuma just couldn't do it anymore. He wasn't even sure if he could beat Tobirama if he did challenge him. Besides, Tobirama hadn't stolen anything. Instead, he merely held up a mirror. He was right. Butsumo was letting it happen for nothing. But then again, what could he do? And that's where we should wrap it up for now. The darker nature of this what if always gets my creative juices pumping, and while it eats me up inside every time a character dies, I must say that the story is compelling enough for me to want to keep telling it every time we reach this point. But alas, time is running out for this time around. I hope to continue it soon. Be sure to let me know in the comments what you liked about this video and where it should go next. I enjoy it when you give me pointers. Makes me feel like we're all making this story together. Until next time, peace.
Did you enjoy our video? Well, then be sure to check out these other great videos from the Amagi, and make sure to subscribe and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos.